The empty parking lots say more than any financial report ever could. Across America, restaurant chains that once defined family dinners and weekend celebrations are fading into history. Neon signs flicker over vacant booths and dark dining rooms, relics of an era that can't be revived. This isn't a temporary slump or a seasonal slowdown. It's the inevitable collapse of brands that built their identities on promises they can no longer keep. Rising labor costs, shifting consumer habits, and the aftershocks of pandemic-era disruption have created a perfect storm that even once dominant chains can't survive. The casual dining experience that once united families now competes with delivery apps, home-cooked meals, and cheaper entertainment options that better match today's pace of life. What we're seeing isn't just business failure. It's the quiet disappearance of gathering places that once connected entire communities through shared meals and familiar comfort. Number 12. O'Charley's. For decades, O'Charley's represented reliable Southern comfort food served in a casual atmosphere that felt welcoming to families across the region. The chain built its reputation on hearty portions, reasonable prices, and the kind of consistent quality that kept customers coming back week after week. But in 2025, that reliability has vanished along with most of the restaurants that once carried the brand's name. Store closures have accelerated at an alarming pace throughout the South, with locations shuttering without warning or explanation. Customers arrive to find darkened windows and locked doors where they once enjoyed Sunday dinners and birthday celebrations. The corporate response to these closures has been radio silence, with no official statements addressing the systematic dismantling of what was once a regional powerhouse. Social media accounts that once promoted daily specials and community events now sit abandoned, their last posts dating back months or even years. The digital presence that modern restaurants depend on for customer engagement has completely disappeared, leaving former patrons wondering if their local O'Charley's will be the next to vanish without notice. This communication breakdown signals a company that has given up on its own brand. Financial obligations continue mounting as landlords file lawsuits for unpaid rent and suppliers chase outstanding invoices. The legal troubles paint a picture of a chain that can no longer meet its basic operational commitments. When restaurants can't pay rent or keep inventory stocked, closure becomes inevitable rather than strategic. The few remaining O'Charley's locations operate with skeleton crews and limited menus, creating dining experiences that feel more like going out of business sales than restaurant visits. Service suffers when there aren't enough staff members to handle basic operations, and food quality declines when kitchens operate with insufficient resources and inadequate preparation time. Number 11. Friendly's. The red and white checkered floors and towering ice cream sundaes once made Friendly's the ultimate family destination. Children grew up associating the brand with special occasions, birthday parties, and the simple joy of sharing a fribble with friends. But nostalgia can't sustain a business when the fundamentals have completely broken down. Empty lots now mark where Friendly's locations once anchored shopping plazas throughout New England and the Mid-Atlantic. The iconic buildings that housed countless family memories have been demolished or converted to entirely different businesses, erasing decades of community presence in towns where Friendly's was often the only full-service restaurant option. Corporate ownership changes have created instability that filters down to every operational level. New management teams arrive with different visions and strategies, but none have successfully addressed the core problems that drove customers away in the first place. Each ownership transition brings fresh promises of revival that never materialize into sustainable improvements. Menu pricing has reached levels that contradict the family-friendly positioning that built the brand. Parents who once considered Friendly's an affordable treat for their children now face bills that rival upscale casual dining establishments. The value proposition that sustained generations of customer loyalty has been completely destroyed by inflationary pressures and corporate desperation. The ice cream quality that differentiated Friendly's from generic family restaurants has declined noticeably as cost-cutting measures compromise the ingredients and preparation methods that once made desserts memorable. When the signature product that defines your brand no longer delivers exceptional experiences, customer defection becomes inevitable and irreversible. Number 10. California Pizza Kitchen. The bankruptcy filing was supposed to mark a fresh start for California Pizza Kitchen, with new ownership promising to revitalize the brand and return it to its innovative roots. But those promises have proven hollow as mall locations continue disappearing, and the revival strategy shows no signs of working. Shopping mall anchors that once relied on California Pizza Kitchen to draw diners now face vacant restaurant spaces that highlight the broader decline of mall-based dining. The foot traffic that sustained these locations has shifted to other venues, leaving California Pizza Kitchen fighting for customers in an environment that no longer supports their business model. Post-bankruptcy operations have struggled with consistency issues that undermine customer confidence. Menu items that once showcased creative California cuisine now arrive prepared carelessly, with ingredients that feel generic rather than premium. The culinary innovation that built the brand's reputation has been replaced by cost-cutting shortcuts that satisfy neither customers nor critics. Corporate communication about the chain's future remains vague and unconvincing. Press releases mention strategic initiatives and market repositioning, but customers see only continuing closures and declining service quality. The disconnect between management messaging and operational reality creates doubt about whether California Pizza Kitchen has any viable path forward. Franchise relationships have deteriorated as individual operators question whether the brand still provides value worth the investment. When franchisees lose confidence in corporate leadership and brand direction, the entire system becomes unstable, accelerating the closure process that erodes market presence and customer awareness. Labor challenges have intensified as the chain struggles to maintain adequate staffing levels in remaining locations. Kitchen operations that once ran smoothly with experienced teams now rely on undertrained workers who can't execute the complex menu items that differentiate California Pizza Kitchen from competitors. 8 California Pizza Kitchen from competitors. Number 9. Hooters. The wings and sports bar concept that once felt rebellious and entertaining now seems outdated and desperate. Multiple rebranding attempts have failed to capture younger demographics while alienating the core customer base that sustained the chain through its peak years. The formula that worked in the 1990s feels increasingly irrelevant in a market that demands authenticity over gimmicks. Market exits have accelerated across multiple states as franchise owners abandon territories that no longer generate sustainable profits. Entire regions where Hooters once maintained strong presences now have 0 locations, creating gaps in coverage that signal corporate retreat rather than strategic consolidation. The brand's footprint continues shrinking as leases expire and renewal negotiations fail. Management turnover has created instability that affects everything from marketing messaging to operational standards. Different leadership teams have pursued conflicting strategies without addressing the fundamental identity crisis that makes Hooters feel like a relic from a different era. Customers notice when restaurants lack clear direction and consistent execution. Food quality has declined as cost-cutting measures compromise the wing preparation and cooking methods that originally differentiated Hooters from generic sports bars. When signature menu items lose their distinctive appeal, customers have no reason to choose Hooters over countless alternatives that offer better value and more contemporary dining experiences. The sports viewing experience that once drew crowds now competes with home entertainment systems that provide superior picture quality and comfort. Customers can watch games at home or choose sports bars with better food, modern atmospheres, and more engaging social environments than Hooters currently provides. Number 8. Perkins Restaurant and Bakery. The breakfast and comfort food chain that served 3 generations of families is quietly fading away as its aging customer base literally disappears. The restaurants that once bustled with morning coffee crowds and late-night pie enthusiasts now sit mostly empty, their vinyl booths and dated decor feeling like museums of a bygone dining era. Rising operational costs have made the low-margin breakfast business unsustainable for locations that can't generate sufficient traffic volume. Rent increases, labor shortages, and food cost inflation have created financial pressures that exceed what traditional breakfast pricing can support. The economic model that sustained Perkins for decades no longer works in today's market conditions. Younger demographics show little interest in the traditional diner experience that defined Perkins' appeal. Coffee shop culture, fast casual breakfast options, and meal delivery services have captured the morning dining market that Perkins once dominated. The generational shift in breakfast preferences has left Perkins without a clear path to attract new customers. Maintenance backlogs are visible in remaining locations where worn carpeting, outdated fixtures, and aging equipment create environments that feel neglected rather than welcoming. The comfortable familiarity that once attracted regular customers now feels shabby and uninviting compared to renovated competitors and newer dining concepts. Franchise operations struggle with profitability as individual operators question whether Perkins can survive long enough to justify continued investment. When franchisees lose confidence in brand viability, the entire system becomes vulnerable to accelerated closures that create a downward spiral of reduced market presence and customer awareness. Number 7. Fuddruckers. The build-your-own burger concept that promised the world's greatest hamburgers has been reduced to a shadow of its former self through ownership changes and systematic franchise closures. What began as an innovative approach to casual dining has devolved into a confused brand with no clear identity or competitive advantage. Ownership transitions have created operational chaos, as different management teams pursued conflicting strategies without understanding what made Fuddruckers successful originally. The hands-on burger building experience that differentiated the chain has been compromised by cost-cutting measures that eliminate the very features customers valued most. Franchise closures have accelerated nationwide as individual operators abandon locations that no longer generate adequate returns. The massive restaurant spaces that once accommodated busy lunch crowds now feel cavernous and empty, with overhead costs that exceed what current traffic levels can support. Real estate designed for high-volume operations becomes a liability when customer counts decline dramatically. Food preparation standards have deteriorated as remaining locations struggle to maintain the fresh ground beef and made-to-order quality that justified premium pricing. The burger assembly process that once felt interactive and engaging now seems slow and inefficient compared to fast casual competitors that deliver superior products more quickly. Market positioning has become unclear as Fuddruckers fails to compete effectively against either fast food burger chains or upscale burger restaurants. The middle ground that once provided competitive advantage now feels like no man's land, where customers find better options at both price points. Brand recognition continues declining as store closures reduce visibility and marketing spending disappears. New customers have no awareness of what Fuddruckers offers, while former customers assume the brand has already disappeared from their markets entirely. Number 6. Corner Bakery Cafe. The bankruptcy filing marked the beginning of the end for Corner Bakery Cafe, with empty storefronts throughout urban markets, telling the story of a concept that couldn't survive changing customer expectations and economic pressures. The fast casual bakery model that once seemed innovative now feels outdated and overpriced. Urban lease obligations have become unsustainable as foot traffic patterns shift away from downtown business districts and office buildings. The lunch crowd that sustained corner bakery locations during peak years has largely disappeared due to remote work trends and changing dining habits that favor delivery over sit-down meals. Menu complexity created operational challenges that franchise locations couldn't execute consistently. The extensive selection of sandwiches, salads, soups, and baked goods required inventory management and preparation skills that exceeded what many operators could deliver profitably. Simplified menus might have helped, but corporate leadership pursued expansion over execution. Competition intensified from both coffee chains and fast casual concepts that offered similar products with better execution and more competitive pricing. Corner Bakery's positioning between coffee shops and lunch restaurants left it vulnerable to competitors who focused more successfully on specific day parts and customer needs. The bakery component that gave the chain its name became a liability rather than an asset, as fresh baking requirements increased labor costs and complexity without generating sufficient revenue to justify the investment. Customers expected bakery quality at fast food prices, creating an impossible economic equation. Number 5. TGI Fridays. The striped awnings and brass railings once symbolized the American casual dining revolution. TGI Fridays invented the singles bar restaurant concept, turning dining out into a social experience where strangers became friends over loaded potato skins and mudslides. The energy was infectious, the service theatrical, and the atmosphere genuinely fun. But in 2025, the party has definitively ended, and guests are heading for the exits. Debt obligations have reached crushing levels that make normal operations impossible. Interest payments consume revenue that should fund restaurant improvements and staff wages. The financial burden has grown so severe that basic maintenance gets deferred, creating dining environments that feel tired and neglected. When restaurants can't invest in their own upkeep, decline accelerates rapidly. Traffic patterns show customers abandoning TGI Fridays for competitors that offer better food, superior service, and more contemporary atmospheres. The bar area that once buzzed with happy hour crowds now sits mostly empty, even during traditional peak times. The social energy that defined the brand has evaporated, leaving behind hollow spaces that amplify the absence of excitement. Corporate restructuring attempts have failed to address the fundamental problems that drove customers away. New management teams announce turnaround strategies that sound impressive in press releases, but translate into confused execution at store level. Employees struggle to implement constantly changing initiatives while maintaining basic service standards. Menu updates feel desperate rather than innovative, with limited time offers and celebrity partnerships that generate brief attention but fail to create lasting customer engagement. The loaded appetizers and signature cocktails that once felt indulgent now seem overpriced and ordinary compared to options at restaurants that execute similar concepts more successfully. The cultural relevance that made TGI Fridays a destination has completely disappeared. Younger demographics associate the brand with their parents' generation rather than their own social experiences. The casual dining model that felt revolutionary in the 1980s now seems outdated and irrelevant to customers who value authenticity over manufactured fun. Number 4, Ruby Tuesday. The salad bar that once set Ruby Tuesday apart from every other casual dining chain has become a symbol of everything wrong with the brand. What began as a point of differentiation has evolved into a liability that increases cost without generating sufficient customer interest. The garden fresh promise feels hollow when execution consistently disappoints. Mall-anchored locations face extinction as shopping centers struggle with declining foot traffic and changing retail patterns. The anchor restaurant spaces that Ruby Tuesday once occupied now sit vacant, highlighting the broader collapse of the mall dining ecosystem. Real estate designed for high-volume family dining becomes impossible to operate profitably when customer counts fall dramatically. Reinvention attempts have backfired spectacularly as the brand struggles to define what it wants to represent. Menu experiments that abandon core strengths alienate existing customers without attracting new ones. The identity confusion shows up in marketing messages that contradict operational reality and confuse potential diners about what Ruby Tuesday actually offers. Closure announcements have become so frequent that remaining locations feel temporary rather than permanent fixtures in their communities. Customers develop relationships with restaurants they expect to visit repeatedly, but Ruby Tuesday's instability makes investment in the dining experience feel pointless. Why become attached to a restaurant that might disappear next month? Kitchen execution has deteriorated as cost-cutting measures compromise the food quality that justifies casual dining prices. Entrees arrive lukewarm, vegetables feel overcooked, and preparation shortcuts create meals that disappoint rather than satisfy. The gap between menu descriptions and actual food delivery has grown too wide to ignore. Regional market exits have accelerated as the chain abandons territories where profitability seems impossible. Entire states where Ruby Tuesday once maintained strong presences now have minimal or zero locations, creating coverage gaps that signal strategic retreat rather than temporary consolidation. Number 3, Red Lobster. The bankruptcy filing that was supposed to provide breathing room and reorganization opportunity has instead accelerated Red Lobster's decline into irrelevance. The endless shrimp promotions and Cheddar Bay biscuits that once drew crowds now feel like desperate attempts to mask fundamental operational problems that restructuring couldn't solve. Nationwide operations continue suffering as the bankruptcy fallout creates supplier relationship problems and staffing instability. Vendors demand cash payments rather than extending credit terms, creating inventory challenges that affect menu availability and food quality. The operational disruption makes consistent dining experiences impossible to deliver. Customer perception has shifted dramatically as bankruptcy coverage highlighted years of mismanagement and decline. The brand that once represented accessible luxury dining now feels like a cautionary tale about corporate incompetence. Public trust once damaged proves nearly impossible to rebuild in competitive restaurant markets. Seafood supply chain issues have intensified as Red Lobster's weakened financial position reduces negotiating power with suppliers. The fresh fish and premium shellfish that justified higher prices become harder to source consistently at costs that allow profitable operations. Menu quality suffers when restaurants can't secure the ingredients that define their identity. Location closures continue accelerating despite bankruptcy protection, with franchisees abandoning territories and corporate locations shuttering without replacement plans. The market coverage that once made Red Lobster ubiquitous has contracted dramatically, leaving former customers with no nearby options and new customers with no brand awareness. Marketing spending has virtually disappeared as available resources focus on basic operations rather than customer acquisition. The advertising campaigns that once made Red Lobster a household name have been replaced by silence that allows competitors to capture market share without resistance. Number 2. Logan's Roadhouse. The peanut shells on the floor and country music atmosphere once created an authentic Roadhouse experience that transported diners to a simpler time. The mesquite grilled steaks, loaded baked potatoes, and roll basket with honey butter felt like genuine comfort food served in an environment that celebrated American dining traditions. But the pandemic recovery that management promised never materialized. Post-pandemic operations have struggled with staffing shortages that make normal service impossible. The casual dining experience depends on attentive servers who can manage multiple tables while maintaining the friendly hospitality that defines the concept. When restaurants operate with skeleton crews, service quality collapses and customer satisfaction plummets. Layoff announcements have become routine as the chain reduces workforce costs rather than investing in the human resources needed for successful operations. Each staffing cut creates additional pressure on remaining employees while degrading the customer experience that generates repeat business. The downward spiral becomes self-perpetuating. Corporate parent company financial troubles have created uncertainty about Logan's Roadhouse's future viability. When ownership groups struggle with broader portfolio challenges, individual restaurant concepts become expendable rather than priorities for investment and development. The Roadhouse concept requires consistent support to maintain operational standards. Menu execution has declined as kitchen staffs operate with reduced labor and simplified preparation methods. The mesquite grilling that differentiated Logan's steaks requires skilled cooking techniques that undertrained staff cannot execute consistently. Food quality problems destroy the value proposition that justifies casual dining prices. Real estate obligations continue mounting as lease payments exceed what current revenue levels can support. The large format restaurants that once accommodated busy dinner crowds now feel oversized and expensive when customer counts remain depressed. Fixed costs become unsustainable when sales volume stays below break-even levels. Market positioning has become unclear as Logan's fails to compete effectively against either chain steakhouses or local roadhouse concepts. The middle ground that once provided competitive advantage now feels like no man's land, where customers find better options at multiple price points and service levels. Number 1. Boston Market. The rotisserie chicken that once filled neighborhoods with the aroma of home-cooked meals has become a ghost of American dining. Boston Market built an empire on the promise of wholesome, family dinners without the hassle of preparation. The golden brown chickens rotating in glass cases, the hearty side dishes that felt homemade, and the convenience of restaurant-quality comfort food created a concept that seemed bulletproof. But in 2025, lawsuits, unpaid workers, and mass closures have transformed Boston Market from a trusted family brand into a cautionary tale about corporate collapse. Legal troubles have multiplied at an unprecedented rate as unpaid vendors, landlords, and employees pursue collection through the courts. The lawsuits paint a picture of a company that stopped meeting basic financial obligations months or even years ago. When restaurants can't pay for food supplies, rent, or employee wages, operational collapse becomes inevitable rather than avoidable. Employee horror stories have emerged from locations across the country where workers arrive to find locked doors, bounced paychecks, and no communication from corporate management. The human cost of Boston Market's failure extends beyond disappointed customers to include hard-working employees who depended on steady income from what they thought was a stable employer. Store abandonment has reached epidemic proportions, with locations simply disappearing overnight without notice to customers or communities. The restaurants that once anchored strip mall dining options now sit empty with equipment still inside, creating eerie reminders of a brand that gave up on itself and its obligations to stakeholders. Food safety concerns have emerged from the chaotic closure process as abandoned locations leave perishable inventory to spoil in unmaintained facilities. Health department interventions have become necessary to address sanitary hazards created by restaurants that simply walked away from their responsibilities to public safety. Franchise relationships have completely broken down as individual operators discover they're on their own with no corporate support for marketing, supply chain management, or operational guidance. The system that once provided strength through shared resources has collapsed into every location, fighting for survival independently. The rotisserie chicken concept that seemed so simple and scalable has proven impossible to execute profitably when management loses focus on fundamental business operations. Boston Market's failure represents more than just another restaurant closure. It symbolizes the complete breakdown of trust between a brand and every stakeholder who believed in its promise. The restaurant industry's transformation is permanent, not a passing phase. The chains collapsing in 2025 failed to adapt to new economic realities, shifting customer expectations and competition that rewards innovation over nostalgia. Their decline marks the end of an era when familiarity could substitute for quality. What's emerging from this upheaval is a clearer, more demanding dining culture. Customers now prioritize authenticity, value, and consistent quality over marketing promises and brand legacy. The restaurants that thrive will be those that deliver genuine experiences at fair prices, not those relying on name recognition or nostalgia. The empty storefronts left behind aren't signs of chaos but of accountability. Diners have spoken with their wallets, rewarding brands that respect their time, money, and standards. The future of American dining belongs to restaurants that evolve, listen, and serve with integrity, not those that took customer loyalty for granted.